Good morning, it's Michelle here. So this is a quick tutorial on how to make a peg bag because my daughter-in-law, the lovely Rebecca, down in South Africa, and she's on Sewn Made as well. She makes lovely stuff out of shweshwe fabrics she gets in Africa. So I thought I'd give her a quick tutorial on how to make a peg bag the really quick and easy way. So I'm going to try and do this with one take so that I can just get it done as quickly as possible. So I'm going to turn you downwards now so you can see the table. Whoops, sorry about that. I've got to tighten one of these. Seriously, this is far from a professional setup here. I just use the things that I have. So bear with me. There you go. We're tightening up this so you don't droop. And then I can show you. Right. Take a piece of fabric, a rectangle, okay? It needs to be any size depending on the width you want your bag. So cut the width and then cut the length so that it's at least double plus a little bit of what you want. So I've got mine folded in half already along the length, so it's now square-ish mine. First thing you're going to do is you're going to cut a little bit of a curve out of this edge over here, and it'll become clearer why we do that. Now you can do this freehand, or you can do it with a bowl or a plate and just put a curve in here so that you've got a bit of an opening there, whichever one you prefer. But I'm just going to do it freehand. So I've folded it in quarter. Here's the middle bit here. So I want it to go in the smiley, in the shape of a smiley face. So what I'm going to do is fold it, and this is the two open edges, the raw edges here. And I'm going to cut whatever size curve you want, whatever, whether it's really round or oval, doesn't matter. But the point is you land up with a smiley face at the top. Now we're going to go over to the machine, and we are going to put a piece of bias binding along this edge here. This bias binding I made out of some fabric that was lying around. So if you haven't made bias binding before, make it 4 times the width you want it to be finally, so the final width. Then you fold it in half, iron it down, and then you fold it towards the half and towards the half, and then fold it in on itself so you've got a nice piece of bias tape. Now let's go over to the machine and attach that. So I'm going to turn you until you can see the machine. So I'm going to go around here. Sorry about the noise, there's a massive plastic bag in the way of my wheelchair. So here we go. Let's move the projects that are in progress and drag this here. Husqvarna, Viking, this is Vicky, over to here and plug her in. I'm really not organized. This was so spur of the moment. So sorry guys if you're one of those people that likes very orderly videos. This is not the channel to be watching because I just kind of do my own thing as I go along. Straight stitch. I am literally going to put the bias binding over the edge that I cut, the 2 smiley faces, okay? So pop your bias binding on there and put it on halfway. There are multiple ways of putting on bias binding. This is probably the most difficult. But if you want, you do it the traditional way, which is opening it up fully. Let me show you. Opening it up fully, raw sides together. Sew a seam down there, and then fold it over and over again, and sew it down the side. But I don't want to do that for this demo, so I'm just going to go for it. And I don't even have the correct color thread on here, so I'm just going to use what I've got. As I go, don't stretch your smiley face, your curve, because otherwise it will buckle, crease. It just won't look as neat. So as close to the edge as you can, or zigzag it if you're not that confident yet, because the zigzag will catch most of your binding, both at the back and the front. So it's a bit more forgiving than if you do a straight stitch the way I'm doing it. So there you go, we're approaching the one end. I'm going to snip that off. I'm going to cut the bias tape. So we've now got one bound curve. I'm going to cut off the excess. And we're going to go and repeat that on the other side. Do this on the right side of your bag so that if it does miss catching the bias tape on the opposite end, on the back end, then it doesn't matter as much. A couple of missed patches on a peg bag is really not going to make a huge difference to the functionality and how pretty it looks from the front. So stitch that down. Okay, remember, don't stretch your curve, because anywhere you cut a curve is going to be on the bias, and on the bias means that it's the part of the fabric at the greatest stretch, so it will stretch out of shape. So try not to stretch it. Alright, we've finished the other side. Next thing we're going to do, so we've got two bound edges. We've bound both of our edges now. And now what we want to do is, let me push this back so I can get this into the frame a bit better. Turn it right side facing upwards. You would want to press this because of that curve. It is going to actually look a little bit bowed at the moment. So what I'm going to do is come over to the iron and give it a little bit of steam to flatten that seam really nicely and to make sure the bias tape lies nice and flat. Okay, I've done that. So now we've got a much flatter seam. So what this is going to do is, I'll just show you what the end will look like. You're going to fold either this way up and that one down, or vice versa. So it doesn't matter, your preference. And that or that one down, the top coming down first and the bottom coming up. It won't make any difference. It's entirely up to you. What you want is this gap here, and that's to make it easier for you to pop your pins in. Not your pins, your pegs. So you can overlap it as much or as little as you like, but in this case we don't want it to overlap too much, otherwise it's more challenging to get your pegs into the bag. So what you're aiming for is a small seam allowance, a small section at the top, so that you can make a mark. You can either crease it on the iron or just crease it with your fingernail or a pen, but you want to get that crease there, and you want to fold it in half and mark it again. So what you've effectively done is mark the center of your bag, and that's where you're going to put a buttonhole or an eyelet, whatever it is that you want. You can do that by hand or on the machine, and you're going to go and put a buttonhole in there. Now that I've got it marked, I'm going to take a little scrap of the fabric that I used, and I'm going to pack it, put it behind where my buttonhole is going to go. And that's just to reinforce this little area here, so that it is going to be a nice, neat and strong buttonhole when I'm finished. Now, alternatively, if you don't fancy doing a buttonhole, just do some zigzag stitch around it, and that will work just as well. So now I'm going to change my setting on my machine for it to do a buttonhole for me. Let's see if I can remember how. This one goes backward, doesn't it? Yes, so going backward, and then I've got to press something, reverse, for it to do the side bars, and then press that button again for it to finish off the buttonhole. And it'll cut it for me, and it's done. So there I have a buttonhole where my coat hanger is going to go. So I'm going to slit that open with my little snips, and then I can trim around this excess that I've got here. You don't need this excess fabric where your buttonhole is, as long as you've got fabric behind the buttonhole to just make it a little bit stronger. Just going to trim away the bits of excess fabric that I don't need. So there you go, cut off the scraps, and now you can see I've got a buttonhole right there. Finally, we're going to turn over, snip my threads. I don't like leaving threads on my sewing. Fold it back exactly the way you had it the first time round, so that this buttonhole is exactly on the edge of that seam, and that's the important thing. Otherwise your coat hanger's neck is going to come out in the wrong place. Fold your bottom back up. You can pop some pins in the side now if you want. I'll grab a pin here just so that it doesn't move. Pop a pin in each side to make sure where the opening is doesn't move while we're sewing. Pop a pin on this side. Now you've got a few options here. You can do it really simply by doing a plain seam, or you've got the option as well to do a French seam. So that's sewing 2 rows of stitches, and it's very neat and tidy. Or you can do a row of straight stitches, which is what I'm going to do. Oops, I seem to still be on buttonhole. Let's fix that quickly. And what I'm going to do is a row of straight stitches, trim it nice and neatly, and then I'm going to do a row of zigzag on the seam, just to neaten it off. If you want to be really posh, what you could do is do binding. So to match the binding that you did on the mouth bit of your bag, and you could go on there and you can actually put some bias tape onto that so that the inside looks as beautiful as the outside does. So there we go. Just finish your beginning and your end off with some backward and forward stitches to make sure your bag is nice and strong. And there you have it. It's all sewn together. Trim off your seams. Go and do a zigzag stitch. Then the final thing is cut off your points so you get nice corners that turn really beautifully. And voila, you turn your bag the other way around. Let's get you a bit this way. Turn the top over. So we're turning our bag the right way around now. And don't forget to cut your buttonhole open. Just needs to be a big enough buttonhole for the coat hanger to go in. If you don't have a wooden coat hanger that you can cut to the width, so you would have to cut both ends of your coat hanger off, okay? Don't cut the length off one side, otherwise your neck of your coat hanger won't be in the middle. So whatever you've got to cut off, lie your coat hanger on here and put a mark and put a mark. So it comes to the corners and is a tiny bit shorter, so it tucks into this corner really nicely and holds your peg bag open, because otherwise your peg bag is just going to sag when you put your pins in. So that's why it's good to have a wooden coat hanger. But if you haven't got a wooden coat hanger, a metal one will work. You just have to bend it so that it fits into that space. And give it a quick press and you have a beautiful, very nice, very functional peg bag. I do have a coat hanger here, but it also won't fit, but I can just give you an idea of how it would work. So this is a skirt coat hanger. So you could use one of these, remove these clips, and then cut this shorter and put the rubber stopper back on. And then literally all you're doing is threading the neck through the top of your bag and then popping it in there. And of course, if it was shorter, it would be inside your bag, and that's your peg bag done and dusted. So I hope you've enjoyed that, and I hope it's helped to make a super quick and easy gift for somebody. And honestly, the fabric choices are endless. You could even make it in oilcloth, but you know, it's going to be outside. If it lasts for a few years in the sun and the wind and the rain, that's okay. You can make another one as well. So there you go. Make that maybe with a matching apron or something nice like mittens or gloves for your friend or your loved one. So there you go. How to make a very quick and easy peg bag for yourself and friends. Have a lovely day, everybody. I hope you've enjoyed this little quick tutorial, and we'll speak to you soon. Love from all of us here at Hesketh Emporium. Bye.